Planar magnetic headphones and IEMs are flooding the market and cover the whole gamut of the price range. Finally, we have many selections, no matter what your budget. Gone are the days when companies like Audeze had no competition. But with more headphones, there's always the question whether the newest iteration is a meaningful alteration from what came before. This is the Sivga P2 Pro. It's Sivga's latest planar magnetic headphone that costs around $450. Let's take a dive and see what this thing has to offer. If you've seen any of Sivga's other headphones from the last few years, then you can expect a consistent design and marketing philosophy. This company spends little time on audiophile mumbo-jumbo and typically provides information about build and little insight into the sound signature. This method deviates a little bit with the P2 Pro. Sivga wants to drive home the point that they have implemented what they call a, quote, sapphire vibration circuit. This supposedly enhances the driver performance. Their marketing claims that this methodology employed plasma glow discharge technology, ion bombardment technology, ultra-low temperature disposition technology, and plasm cleaning technology. None of this means anything to me. It's a vague list of stuff that has actual real-world application in material construction. But whether this makes a noticeable and consistent difference in headphones? Well, we don't really have any evidence. That little joyride done with, the P2 Pro is otherwise a fairly standard planar magnetic headphone with 32 ohm impedance and about average sensitivity around 90 decibels. This means that while you can definitely run these off your laptop headphone jack, you will probably be better served using a dedicated amp with a planar magnetic headphone. In my test, I found that an amp that outputs at least 250 milliwatts at 32 ohms tends to provide sufficient power for peak performance here. I will also note that a significant increase of power output does tend to make an audible difference in the performance. So with triple the power output for an amp, for example, I heard tighter bass impact and marginally greater clarity. As for build, the P2 Pro is yet again a testament to Sivga's construction philosophy. Build it well and build it right. This headphone is made of wood and metal, feels sturdy, and provides the necessary conveniences that any headphone should come with. For example, the ear cups swivel quite a bit to offer a full range of placement options. The headband, while lightly padded, still offers more comfort than alternatives such as Audeze and Hi-Fi Man. The headband adjustment system is simple, but very effective. Instead of preset notches, you can fine-tune the headband placement. And of course, the P2's earpads are user replaceable. These do not use any special attachment system. If you can find alternatives that fit the shape of the ear cups, you can use them. The P2 is about as comfortable as the Sennheiser Ava and Sivga Phoenix. It is much more comfortable than the Audeze LCD2 Classic and Hi-Fi Man Sundara. These headphones have a deficiency of ear cup movement, very tight clamp, and unpadded headband. And by the way, the LCD2 Classic is much more heavy. The P2 Pro comes with the typical well-built cable. You'll get a 4.4mm to 3.5mm adapter, as well as a 1/4 inch adapter. The headphone comes with a very nice hardshell case, but sadly no replaceable ear pads. I used the P2 Pro for a few weeks as one of my go-to headphones. I paired it with the Burson 3XR, Mytek Brooklyn DAC Plus, Low-2-Paw S1, Low-2-Paw 6000, EcoZerta ITM03, and plugged directly into my PC headphone jack. I listened to lossless FLAC files, streamed lossy music from Spotify, watched movies and TV shows, and generally put the headphone through my normal use. Throughout this process, I compared against the Allo Audio S5X, the most neutral headphone I have. I also did proper volume-matched A/B testing against the Sennheiser Ava, Audeze LCD2 Classic, Hi-Fi Man Sundara, and the Moondrop Para. Sivga says that the P2 Pro has solid and robust bass. Well, I think that's pretty close to the mark. The P2 does have a sub-bass roll-off, but not nearly as obvious as with other planar magnetic headphones I've heard. In fact, compared to the other headphones in this review, the P2 consistently rendered sub-bass frequencies more clearly and with greater reverberation. This, of course, was not the same as with the S5X or any other dynamic driver headphone. But it was a noticeable difference from among the typical planar sound. In Mountains by Hans Zimmer, there's a low rumble from the beginning of the track. The P2 let me hear that detail from the start. While it was less obvious than on the S5X, it was clearly more apparent than on the other planar headphones I tested against. Separation of sub-bass from mid-bass was generally more clear on those other headphones, however. Drum strikes were harder, yet not sharp or piercing on the P2 compared to the Sennheiser. The Ava also had fairly hard drum strikes, but the reverberation was faster than what I heard on the P2. The LCD2 had sharper drum strikes, but also had some of the quickest transients. Frankly, the boost in the sub-bass on the P2 makes the bass appear more robust, warmer, overall more obvious than on the other planar headphones I tested against. Of course, that comes at the sacrifice of bass clarity. In songs like Aerodori, Pure Water, and Conquer, the competitor headphones I tested against, except the S5X, always rendered clearer separation of drum strikes. The P2 in comparison tended to hold each strike just a little bit longer, slightly joining with the following strikes. Sivga claims that the mids are natural and soft. You know, a repeated issue with hi-fi brands is that they tend to severely accentuate sibilants and treble to either make vocals seem to jump out or to eke out the perception of detail. And now, with the P2 Pro, finally, a hi-fi tuning as far more in line with a gentler, closer to neutral mids rendition. The P2 does not accentuate sibilants. In fact, there seems to be a concerted effort to control those pesky 2 to 5 kHz peaks where sibilants can live. My go-to tracks to test this is Orla Gartland's Why Am I Like This and Haim's Want You Back. In both instances, the P2 easily separated the vocals from the instruments, but kept the vocal grain at sibilants subdued. This was not to the same extent as with the, say, harmonic dying Zeus, which really suppresses those kinds of details. But the P2 was also not as harsh with these frequencies as they are on the Ava or LCD2. The Para has a noticeable sibilance push, but not as obvious as on the Ava or the LCD2. And the Sundara was the most neutral rendition of all these headphones. Separation of mid-centric elements was most obvious on the Ava, followed by the Para and the LCD2. The P2 Pro does not sound muddy or veiled, but minute details do not jump out here. On the other hand, I had no trouble hearing multiple vocalists in a mix, and easily heard the various instruments in a typical pop, rock, and jazz track. Sivga says that the treble on the P2 is delicate and clear. I think that's not entirely correct. The P2 has a gentle treble, but one which is not nearly as clear as on the competition. In Scherzo for X-Wings, the P2 readily presented the brass and horns with their nasally, scratchy notes, but these were less energetic than on the rest of the headphones I tested against. Separation and clarity in this track was noticeably greater on all the other headphones as well. Even on excessively high volumes, the P2 could not match the treble clarity and separation of the Ava, the LCD2, and even the Sundara. The Para was the only other headphone that came close to the P2's gentle treble presentation, yet even there, the P2 seemed to have a slightly greater treble reduction, which either could be attributed to improper volume matching or a true difference in tuning. And frankly, based upon all the testing I've done, I tend to favor the latter explanation, that there is actually a greater bit of energy in the treble on the Para. From what I can tell, the P2 has mid and upper treble dips. These clearly were designed to suppress harsher tonalities, or at least frequencies that might be piercing in some settings. As for detail retrieval, well, I think the Ava and Para have greater detail and clarity overall compared to the P2. However, the P2 is still fairly adept at providing most details. The creaking of wood, sharp intakes of breath, electric buzzing effects, whistling of the wind, all of this, when recorded and mastered to be heard, is easily audible on the P2. It's just that the other headphones in this comparison allow such details to be more apparent. On the other hand, the LCD2 was not much more capable at detail retrieval. In fact, going back and forth, it seemed as though the P2 and the LCD2 didn't offer any more or less detail with each other. Though maybe the LCD2 on occasion made some details marginally more separated from the other elements, it's basically a toss-up. In my new light footstep test, I counted 7 to 8 clear footsteps on the P2. The Para and Ava presented 11 to 12, and the LCD2 rendered 8. As for soundstage, the Para, Ava, and LCD2 all have wider soundstage than the P2. The P2 in comparison is wider than the HD6XX and LCD1. The Sundara had the widest soundstage of all of these headphones that I compared, but of course is nowhere close to the soundstage of the Hi-Fi Mandiva or Sennheiser HD800S. Having a variety of choices is healthy. Competition from Hi-Fi brands puts pressure on everyone to try to do better, to think where market trends are headed, and to hopefully listen to feedback. One constant complaint from many audiophiles is that Hi-Fi tuning is too harsh or overly vocal-centric or lacks bass or just is plain too bright. Preferences will be different, of course, but there is truth to these concerns. Sivga seems to have taken this kind of feedback and specifically tuned their new planar headphone more like a dynamic driver and less like the rest. You get robust, though not full bass. You get clear but not harsh vocals. You get smooth, maybe somewhat dark treble. Average detail, above average soundstage. Basically, the P2 Pro is a headphone designed for a broader audience. And maybe that's you, or maybe you prefer a different tuning. Of course, that's all personal. What I can say without reservation is that the Sivga P2 has once again provided excellent build and accessories for cheaper than some big-name brands. The P2 Pro is very comfortable, aesthetically pleasing, and frankly, I think, easy to listen to. For $450, this might be a good purchase for someone looking for this kind of combination.